Hey there folks, Tim Slade here from the eLearning Designers Academy and community. Thank you so much for tuning into today's how-to workshop. If you've never attended one of our how-to workshops before, these are meant to be practical deep dive sessions on all things e-learning, instructional design, articulate storyline, visual design, and everything else in between. Now, if you happen to be watching this on YouTube, make sure to click that like, subscribe, and that bell button so that you'll get alerted the next time I publish a video just like this one. And of course, make sure to join us inside the eLearning Designers community, where you can connect, network, and learn from people like me and others in the industry who are also looking to grow their e-learning and instructional design careers. All right, so for today's how-to workshop, we're going to be taking a look at how to create basic forms of interactivity in Articulate Storyline. Now, if you happen to be completely brand new to Storyline, let's say you've barely started touching it, you just installed it, you're just learning it, I would encourage you to check out my other how-to workshop, A Beginner's Guide to Articulate Storyline, which would be a good primer for you to watch, just as a quick introduction to how Storyline works and the interface before you dive into today's workshop, where we're going to be talking about interactivity in Storyline. Now, you can create all sorts of different and interesting experiences in Storyline. You can create experiences that have animations and audio, you can create quiz questions, and you can also create slides that are interactive. And the power of creating interactive e-learning is that when the learner has to take some sort of action to reveal content, to make a decision, to do something, what it does is it forces the learner to pull the information out of the e-learning course rather than it just being shoved down their throats. I don't know if you've ever taken an e-learning course where you just sit there for sometimes hours, literally, and it just dumps bullet points and information onto you, and those are totally boring, right? The power of creating interactive e-learning, like I said, is it forces your learners to engage in your course and pull information from the course rather than it just being pushed onto them. And what I love about Storyline is that your interactivity can be as simple or as complex as you want it to be. Using some basic components like buttons and states and slide layers and triggers, which we'll learn all about those today, you can mix and match those different tools to create all sorts of different and interesting interactions. So for example, we have this slide here. Let's say we're creating a course on sales and consultation for some call center sales employees, right? Maybe we want to create a slide giving an overview of the customer journey, right? Well, we can create a slide like this where we have markers where the learner clicks to reveal some information. This is a really simple form of interactivity. It's a click to reveal. And while we can have a debate about when or you should use click to reveal interactions, that's a separate conversation. I'll include links down below where you can learn more about that versus performance-based interactions. But again, we're going down a rabbit hole there. Click to reveal interactions like this are a great way to organize concepts into a meaningful way, right? So we give an overview of a process. It can help us reduce the amount of on-screen text. It just allows us to create slides that are not just static bullet points, right? That's a simple form of interactivity. We'll take a look at that today. Another example is a slide like this. This is more of a custom click to reveal interaction, but it uses some of the same elements where we have an item like a character here with different states that changes the appearance of the character. And if I click on the character, hey, we get a slide layer to reveal some information. Again, if you're not sure what states or slide layers are, we will take a look at all of that here today. So again, here's a great example of where we're clicking, revealing some information, another basic form of interactivity. It looks complex, but it's actually quite simple. We'll take a look at that, right? I can click on all these different characters to learn about, what is our experienced executive customer versus the other ones, right? And using those basic building blocks, the states, the layers, the triggers, and the buttons, we can create all sorts of different interactions just like that. So here's one. This is like a tabs interaction where the learner clicks and we get some interesting information, and we can click and reveal all these different steps about whatever we're talking about, closing the sale, right? And we also have other forms of interactivity. Here's one. This is like a slide out where we click and it reveals some information to us. Maybe this is part of a decision-based interaction, right? Here's a reminder if we need some help, but then we can click and drag and get some feedback. Again, this is still using all of those basic elements that we talked about earlier: buttons, states, triggers, and slide layers. So we'll take a look at all of these examples here today. All right. So Let's jump over to my practice file here in Storyline. I'm going to close out of this one here and come to this file here. Now, if you're following along, you're creating some of this stuff on your own, feel free to pause me at any time if I go too quick, or rewind me if you want to follow along with what I'm doing. But I'm going to build this out and these different interactions and talk through them and explain each step along the way, all right? Now, in Storyline, like I said, there's these different building blocks: buttons, states, slide layers, and triggers. These are the building blocks for creating interactive e-learning. And what I love is that you can create or program, and I'll use air quotes here, program different forms of interactivity without having to write any code. That's the power of Storyline, all right? And so just know, everything that I'm showing you here today are just some examples of what you can do with these different building blocks. But depending on what you're trying to create, once you understand the building blocks, the sky's the limit, all right? So let's start with what I consider to be the simplest form of interactivity in Storyline, which is that markers interaction, right? Where the learner clicks the little icon and it reveals a pop-up window. In my opinion, this is the simplest form of interactivity, a simple click to reveal interaction. So I've already built this slide here. It has some text, it has some icons, it has this little squiggly line graphic. And let's pretend I wanted to add some markers along this to illustrate, explain the concept of the customer journey, right? Again, this is an example where maybe we're wanting to group information in a meaningful way to help the learner understand a process, something like that, right? And I'll also talk about some other ways that you can use markers here in a moment. Now, a markers interaction is a simple click to reveal interaction. And to do that, I'm going to go to my Insert tab in the ribbon in Storyline. And this is where we can insert all sorts of different types of multimedia. We can insert images from the content library or graphics. We can insert pictures, text, buttons, sliders, everything else, right? And down here, speaking of buttons, sliders, and everything else, this is where interactive objects are in the ribbon. And this is where we can insert buttons. We'll talk about those. We can do sliders and dials. Those are more advanced interactive objects that require variables. Separate how-to workshop on getting started with variables. Again, I'll link to that below and up above. Then we have hotspots, input, and then down here we have markers. Markers are simple little interactive objects where the learner clicks, reveals information. And you can create an interactive marker in a matter of seconds. I was going to say minutes, but it's not even minutes, right? So let's say we wanted to create a marker. It doesn't matter which one you choose. The icons are all the same. I will mention that your colors on your end might be different than mine. I've established kind of a color palette here that I've applied to my project. So, you can always customize the colors. I'll show that. Let's say we wanted to create a marker with this light bulb icon. I'll click that. And now I can click anywhere on my screen to add the marker. So I'm just going to click and put it there. And again, yours might look slightly different with the colors, but we can customize all of that. Now, markers are made up of two elements. We have the actual marker here. That's the interactive object the learner is going to click on. And then we have this. This is the label. This is where we add content to our marker. So for the title, let's say, we'll say Step 1, Discovery. And we'll add our content here. The first step in the customer journey is when the customer discovers your product or service, right? That's some information. Now I'm going to stop right there. Without me doing anything else, I've created an interactive marker. Literally seconds, right? I'm going to click away. Now that label goes away. And I'm going to preview this. I'll go to my ribbon. I'll click preview the slide. And you'll see here, there's my marker. It has this pulsing animation. I'll explain how we can customize that here in a moment. If I hover over it, I get the title, Step 1 Discovery, and if I click, I get the information, right? That's how easy it is to create a marker. Now, of course, you probably want to customize this marker because we have all this extra space. Maybe I don't want it to be this green color. Maybe I want it to have a different type of animation or no animation. I can do all sorts of things to my marker. Maybe I even want to add a graphic here. I can do that as well. So I'm going to close out of my preview. And I'm going to move my marker. Let's say we want the marker to go right here for Step 1, right? I'll put it there. And maybe I don't want this to be so big, so I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. And part of it's going off the slide. We don't want that because we don't want half of the marker or half of the label showing off the screen. It'd get cut off. So I'm going to move it. I'm going to hover my mouse over the edge of it. I'm going to move my marker right there. And let's change the style of the font. We'll change the color. We'll make it white. It's a little bit cleaner looking, creates some more visual contrast there. Make that white. We can even make this a little skinnier to customize the look and feel of the marker, right? Now, while I have my marker selected here, if I go to my Format tab, you'll see here, there's all sorts of options for how I can customize the marker. I can change the color of the marker, change the color of the label, and I have some options over here as well. So for example, let's say I wanted my marker to be red instead of yellow. I can change that just like that. Or I can change, everything from the marker fill. Maybe I want it to be this blue color. Maybe I want it to have a border. I'm gonna make something that I would never actually do, like this red border. And I can even change the icon color within it. In this instance, maybe I'll just stick with the yellow color there, all right? Same thing's true with the label. I can pick from some of these default styles here, or I can customize it here as well. And we'll go back to our green color so we can read it. I'll change the border to that green color. You can customize that however you want, all right? Now over here on the left-hand side, this is where we have some additional options. So if I need to change the icon, I can choose a different icon. So maybe instead of the light bulb, I want to do a number, right? So I can change it to a number, or I can change it to anything. In this case, I think I'll stick with the light bulb icon. Where did that go? Sometimes it takes a minute to find these. Here they are. All right. So there's my light bulb, all right? Now there's a couple of other options here. I could add audio to the marker. So if I click on it, it'll play some audio. I don't have any audio in this case, so I'm not gonna worry about that, but you could add audio. You can also add different types of media. So if I wanted to, I could add a picture to the marker, a graphic, or I can add some video as well. So let's say, for example, I wanted to add a picture. I'm just gonna choose a random one here from my computer. Let's go with, I don't know, this family here. It doesn't really make sense for this, but it's okay, whatever. And maybe I'll make this bigger because we can't see the text anymore. So we're gonna make it a little bit bigger. Maybe we need to make this wider so we can see all that text. There we go. And of course I could change the size of this image as well if I wanted to, right? So you can add a graphic to the marker. In this case, I'm gonna remove the graphic. I don't like the way that looks. So let me click on my marker again, go to my format tools, and I'm gonna delete the media. I don't need that, but you can do that, all right? The other thing you can do, I'm gonna fix this here, put it like that. You can also change how it animates. So I showed you that pulsing animation. There's another one called swirl. It's slightly different. You can also turn off the animation. I encourage you to play with these. They're really simple settings. You can also choose to show all on hover. So when the learner hovers over this, you can show everything, and you can make the marker audio only. You can essentially get rid of the label itself and just make it audio only. Now, again, play with those settings. They're all simple, self-explanatory settings. So I'm gonna preview the slide. And without doing a whole lot of work, right? Like I just created the marker, I added some text. That's how easy it is to create a click to reveal interaction with a marker. Now that I've created one, I can just simply duplicate this. I can just copy and paste it just like I would, any other object in Storyline. So maybe step 2, I'm not gonna create all of these, but let's say step 2 is, I don't know, I'm just make this up. Objections. And we'll say the second step of the customer journey is when the customer comes up with objections to your product or service. I'm making that up. And so I'll make that a little bit bigger so it fits perfectly. Let's change the icon. Maybe we'll do something different. Maybe we'll do the warning sign or something, right? And I could keep creating these markers. That's how easy it is to create a really simple form of interactivity in Storyline using markers. We didn't even have to get into buttons or states or layers or triggers. And that's why I wanted to start off with, is because I think it's just the simplest form of interactivity. If you're going to create something, you can start here and start creating your own basic interactions. There's a lot of different ways you can use markers. This is just one way of doing it. I've seen people do it where, let's say you're doing a system tutorial on how to use a system, right? Maybe you get a good screenshot of whatever you're creating a tutorial on and add markers to different parts of the screen. Or maybe you're showing somebody how to fill out a form, right? You can add markers to the form so they learn about the different areas. Or a map, right? You can show a map and show different areas on the map with markers. There's a lot of different ways you can create simple, click to reveal interactions with markers. And again, it helps you reduce on-screen text so you don't have all this text on the screen, and they help you organize concepts in some sort of meaningful way, all right? That's the basic form of interactivity, the simplest form of interactivity in Storyline with markers. Now we're gonna start moving into custom forms of interactivity, and we're gonna learn about buttons and states and slide layers and triggers. And this is where we start learning about the building blocks of how to create all sorts of different interactive content in Storyline. And again, if you can understand these basic elements, you can build upon them to create all sorts of different interactions. So I have this slide here. I've already pre-built a slide here. This is just, again, some text, some icons, some simple shapes, some more text. And let's say we wanted to create an interaction where the learner has to click a button here and it reveals a little pop-up window about loss of trust. And then they click another button to reveal the loss of customers. And then they click another button here to reveal the loss of sales. These are all consequences of bad customer service, right? Again, reducing on-screen text, learning the basic forms of interactivity. We can do this using buttons and states and slide layers and triggers. So let's start by creating buttons and let's start learning about states. And then we'll do slide layers and triggers here, all right? So I'm gonna go to my Insert tab here. And you'll notice again here in the interactive objects, we have buttons. And there's several different buttons we can choose from. It doesn't matter which style you go with. They all operate exactly the same way. And so I'm gonna go with this pill-shaped button here. So I'll go ahead and click on that. And I'm gonna draw it here, just like I would draw any other shape in Storyline or even in PowerPoint for that matter, right? I'm gonna position it right here. Now, I've created a button. It doesn't look like a button, but I promise you here in a moment, I'll show you how it operates like a button with different states. Now that I have my button here, I need to add some text to it. So let's say we wanted something simple, like a learn more button, where the learner clicks and then they learn more about loss of trust. So I'll click learn more here. And that text is a little large, so I'm gonna make it a little bit smaller here so it's not so big. All right, so that's my button. That's how easy it is. Now, before I continue, I'm not a big fan of how this button looks and feels, so I'm gonna stylize it a little bit differently. You can make your buttons look however you want. This was just the default look of the button when I inserted it. So for example, if I click on my button, go to my Format tab here, I'm gonna change the button fill. I like an inverse looking button, so one that has maybe a white fill and then has a blue outline because it kind of matches the look and feel of my slides. I'm gonna make that outline a little bit thicker here. And we can't see our text, so I'm gonna highlight that and change that to a blue color as well, right? So that is the style of the button. That's creating a button. That's really, really simple. But where buttons get more interesting is when you start working with states with your buttons. So if I click on my button and go to my states panel here, which is to the right of my timeline, this is where we can find the different states of the button. Now first, let me define what states are, because this is a concept a lot of people struggle to understand. States, in my opinion, how I define them, are multiple variations of the same object. You can create different states to show different variations of a single object. So for example, we see here we have a normal state, we have a hover state, and you notice as I hover over it, each state, it slightly changes the look and feel of the button, right? Now you might be wondering, well, why the heck would I want to do that, right? Well, let me tell you kind of the traditional reason why you would want to use states. There's a lot of different ways you can use states in Storyline, but the main reason you use them is to be some sort of visual indicator for the purposes of interactivity. So let's forget about this button for a moment. So imagine when you're working on a computer, you're on the internet, you're using some sort of program, whatever the case might be. And you notice when you hover over something, like as I'm hovering over, if I go to the Home tab here, I'm hovering over all these buttons. You notice how they change the look and feel slightly, like it gets this light blue color fill. And then if I select a tab, the style of the tab changes. That's what states are. Multiple variations of those objects. And it's a visual indicator to me as a user when I have something selected, or if something's interactive, or if something's disabled. You see how this is disabled? That's a disabled state, right? That's a hover state. This is a selected state. And then you have a down state. You have all these different states, visual indicators to let you know that something's interactive. Multiple variations of an object. We can duplicate that experience in Storyline, creating custom states for our buttons, or at least editing the states for our buttons. Now, when you add a button in Storyline, it automatically comes with several different states. It comes with a hover state, a down state. The hover state is what happens when the user hovers their mouse over it. Down state is when they click down on it. Visited state is when it changes after they've clicked on it, means they've visited the button. Disabled state means if you want it to be disabled, where the learner can't click on it, right? That's for more advanced forms of interactivity, but we'll take a look at that as well. Now we can edit these however we want, and I always recommend editing your states, customizing them, because again, you want to create visual cues that your buttons and other interactive objects are interactive. And I'll show you different uses of states here as we work through this. So I'm going to click Edit States here. I have my button here, and I like my normal state. I already customized that, right? It has the blue border, the white fill, the blue text. But maybe I want to do something different for my hover state. I don't like that gray outline. Maybe I want to do the inverse of my normal state. Maybe I want it to have the blue fill with the white text, right? That's a common style of button, right? So now that I have my hover state selected, I can customize it however I want. So for the button fill, I'm going to change it to that blue color. I'm going to change that outline for sure to that blue color. I don't like that gray. And then maybe for the text, I will make it white, right? So there's the inverse of that, right? So there's my normal state, there's my hover state. And I could do the same thing with my down state. Maybe for my down state, I'll do something different. Let's make it the same as my hover state. Let's start with that. Turn off the shadow. And actually, I'm gonna turn off that outline. I don't need that outline. And we will make the text white as well. But maybe for the down state, when the learner has something selected down, maybe I'll change the fill to a darker blue, even darker, something like that, right? And then for the visited state, maybe we'll add a check mark to it, right? One of the cool things you can do with your buttons, if you go to button tools, where the format tab is, where I'm changing the color, all the way here on the left, we have different icons that we can add to the button. So maybe I want to do a little check mark, like this little circular check mark, just like that. You see how it adds the check mark there, all right? And then the disabled state, if I were making my button disabled, I could do that. I don't think I'll be doing that in this case, but I'll show it to you nonetheless. Usually a disabled state for an interactive object is usually when it's grayed out. You see how this is grayed out? Something like that, right? So for that, maybe I'll do the color, the border. I'll make it this gray color, and then I'll change the font or the text color to that same gray color as well to make it appear disabled so the learner can't interact with it if I were using that state. Now that I've created all these custom states, right, I stylized my button. I'm going to click Done Editing States. You always have to click Done Editing States to get out of editing it. I'm going to preview my slide. My button's not doing anything yet, right? And you will see here in a moment, there's my normal state. And if I hover over it, there's my hover state. And if I click down on it, that's my down state. And then we have my visited state like that, right, with the little check mark on it. That's how easy it is to create custom states in Storyline, at least custom button states. And there's different ways you can use that. I'll show you how you can add custom states, all sorts of objects in Storyline, all right? So that's what states are. We're gonna be revisiting states a lot as we move forward. So I'm gonna minimize that for now. Now let's start talking about slide layer. Actually, before we do that, let's actually duplicate this button because I have this button here. I need 2 more buttons anyway. So I'm just gonna copy and paste. The great thing about copying and pasting buttons is you create one and then copy and paste it so that you don't have to recreate all those states and then they all look the same. And while we're at it, before we even get into slide layers, I should rename these buttons. And this is going to be helpful for us when we create our triggers here in a moment to make this interaction work. So if I open up my timeline panel here, this is where I can rename items on my slide. By default, these buttons are button 1, button 2, button 3. It's not very meaningful to me, right? So I'm going to rename my buttons. This is a good best practice anytime you're working with interactive objects in Storyline is to rename them. And you'll see why when we create triggers. So for this first button, I'm going to call it my trust button because it's loss of trust. That's what it's associated with. This one I'll call my customers button. And this one I'll call my sales button. Oops. All right. So I've renamed those on the timeline. That'll help us a little bit later, trust me. Okay, we've created 3 buttons. Now let's talk about our slide layers. So we have our slide layers panel down here. If I want to create an interaction like I described to you earlier, where the learner clicks a button, it reveals a little pop-up window, this is where we're going to start using slide layers. But first, let me describe what slide layers are, because it's a concept that a lot of people struggle to understand at first. So I'm going to take you back in time. Imagine when you were, depending on your age, for me, this was elementary school, but it could be, high school or college even for some people, or it could be, maybe some people don't even understand what this is, but most of you should understand what this is. Remember back when you were in school and your teacher had one of those overhead projectors, like the big boxy thing with the plastic that yellowed, and then it had the big glass thing with the bright light that like projected on the screen. Overhead projector, right? We all know what those are. And the teacher would lay down, like math problems, right? A transparent piece of paper, I can't remember what it was called, on there, and it would project it on there. But then the teacher would lay a transparency on it, right? To reveal the answers. That's what slide layers are like. Slide layers are like the transparencies that are used on an overhead projector, all right? And that'll make sense once I show you how to create a couple of slide layers. But slide layers essentially allow you to create slides on top of your slides. like a transparency on an overhead projector, all right? So keep that concept in your mind as we think about slide layers. It's like a transparency, okay? So let's create a couple of slide layers. So here's my slide layers panel. I'll make it a little bit larger here. And we have our base layer here. This is the slide that we're on, and I can add additional slide layers on top of my slide here. So I'm gonna do that by clicking this new layer here, and it's gonna gray out my slide, and this is a visual indicator to me as I'm developing that I'm on a slide layer, all right? And this is a blank slide layer. And I can add anything I want on a slide layer. You can add text and images or video or audio. You get your own timeline for the slide layer. So you can animate stuff. You can even add triggers to slide layers, which we'll talk about in a moment. And we'll actually talk about animating stuff on slide layers as well. Now for this first slide layer, I'm gonna call this my loss of trust layer. Loss of trust. Because when the learner clicks the Learn More button here on my base layer, I want it to reveal whatever content's going to be on this loss of trust layer, all right? Now, I can put anything I want in here, as I mentioned, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to maybe make a box appear here on top of this loss of trust section on the slide, right? So I'm going to go to my Insert tab, and I'm going to insert a shape, and I'm just going to do a simple shape here, right? And I'm going to draw it all over this, because that's where I want that information to be revealed. And I'm going to change the fill color. We'll make it, like a white fill, and then we'll do no outline, but just to give it a little depth of field, maybe we'll do a shadow, right? We'll apply a shadow, and because good enough is not enough for me, I don't like the way the default shadows look, so I'm going to customize the shadow. I usually like to increase the blurriness of it just to make it a little less dramatic, and then I'm going to bring down that transparency. Oh, that is not the right direction I want to go. No, that makes it more harsh. Maybe make it more subtle. We'll do like 75. I'll do 80% transparent. Play with drop shadows. With drop shadows, subtlety is key. That's why I can't help myself. Okay, so that's the box. Now I can add anything I want on top of it. Let's say we want to add some text for a header, and we'll call this loss of trust. You can make this look however you want. I'm going to make it match my slide. I think I was using Roboto Slab as the heading text. I'll make it bold. Maybe we'll make it blue to match. I'll center it. Again, you can do whatever you want depending on what you're building, right? I'm going to put that here. And then maybe I'll add some text here. So I'll insert another text box and, say when we lose our customers' trust, we lose their, business. Whatever you're going to put, right? That is not how you spell business. And I never know, does this go here or there? I think it goes there. It doesn't matter, right? And that is not how you spell business either. Let's change that. Okay. And then maybe I'll make this text look, we'll just leave it open sans, right? And I can add a bunch of other content here if I wanted to. If I wanted to, maybe I can add an image or an icon, right? And let's do that. Why not? So I'm gonna move this down here. Maybe I want an icon here. Maybe I'll take the icon from this here, copy that, and put that here on my slide layer right there. Again, depending on what you're creating, you can make it look however you want. And that's kind of the point. You can put whatever you want on a slide layer. So we have our base layer, and what we want to have happen is when the learner clicks this button, it's going to reveal that little pop-up window. Now, before we do that though, I want to create the rest of my slide layers. So if I want to add more than one slide layer, I can of course click here to create a new layer. I created a second layer, but rather than recreating all of that from scratch, I'm actually going to delete that layer, and I'm just going to duplicate the one that I have here. So I'm going to right click and click duplicate, and now we're going to call this one loss of customers. Oops. Okay. It's the same thing as loss of trust, has the same elements because it duplicated everything. But now that I'm on loss of customers, I'm going to select this, and let's just move it down here. Ooh, that is not what I wanted to do. Let's just do it with the mouse cursor. It's not going to be perfect. But there we go. That's just about as perfect as we can get. Loss of customers. And maybe I need to make this a little bit bigger so it goes on one line. There we go. I'll just make it like that. And that text was, we'll make it that yellow color, right? Loss of customers, and we will change that to our yellow color. And we'll get rid of this icon here in a moment, but I'm going to copy this. And I'll delete that one. I'll put that here. And when we lose our customers, we lose our business. Again, you know, I can't spell business for some reason, and I'm just making this content up, but you get the point. All right, so that's my second slide layer. Let's do the same thing for the third one. I'm gonna create a third one now. Duplicate slide. This is gonna be loss of sales. And I duplicate, even the loss of customers, loss of sales look exactly the same. I'm on loss of sales. So now I'm just gonna move this on down here. And we will position that right there. So it's like right over it. Okay, there we go. And this is gonna be loss of sales. And what color was that? That's red, so we'll make that red as well, just so it matches. And that icon is not what we want, so I'll copy this icon, put that there, get rid of this one here. And we can say when we lose our sales, we are unable to pay the bills, which is not a good thing, right? Okay. Again, fake content. So we have 3 slide layers. We've created them. That's easy. And we have our base layer slide with the buttons. Now I'm going to preview this. Preview our slide here. And we have our 3 buttons here. And if I click on them, nothing happens, right? We get our little visited check mark. That's fine. But it's not actually revealing our pop-up window. Why is it not doing that? Well, the reason why is because we haven't told Storyline to do that yet. And this is where we're going to learn about triggers, which is the next fundamental element for creating interactive content in Storyline. Triggers are the magical things that allow us to program and tell Storyline what we want it to do without actually having to write any code in order to do it. And this is the special thing about Storyline, is that you can program it without having to actually know how to program. Write code without having to write code. And creating triggers is actually quite simple. It can be very overwhelming at first, but you just have to remember there's 2 elements to every trigger: what you want it to do and when you want it to do it. So if we look at our triggers panel here, which is right above our slide layers panel on the right-hand side, our slide has 2 built-in triggers. All slides in Storyline have 2 built-in triggers. One that says jump to slide, next slide, when the user clicks or swipes next. Jump to slide, previous slide, when user clicks or swipes previous. Those are the triggers that are built in for the player, with the previous and next button in the player. And these triggers have those 2 elements. What do we want it to do? That's number 1. Jump to the next slide. When do we want it to do it? When the user clicks or swipes the next button. That's what the 2 elements of creating a trigger. Now, what do we want it to do in this case? Well, what we want to have happen is we want to show a slide layer. When do we want it to happen? When the learner clicks one of our buttons here, all right? So let's do that. Let's create some triggers. I'm going to create a new trigger here. It's going to open up our trigger wizard. And what action do we want to take? Well, if I click here on this link, you can see there's all sorts of actions we can take. And there's a lot here. We can jump to a slide, jump to a scene, play, pause media, restart the course, exit the course, adjust a variable, etc., etc. In this case, we're going to do show layer. Easy peasy. Now it's going to ask us, well, what layer do we want to show? Well, we have 3 layers that we've created. We're going to start with loss of trust, so that's going to be the loss of trust layer. When do we want to show it? Well, if I click here, you can see there's a lot of instances when we can show it. We can do it when a state changes, when a slider moves, when the timeline starts, all sorts of interesting moments or actions we can take. In this case, it's just going to be when user clicks. Easy peasy. When user clicks what? Okay, well, we have our different buttons. This is where renaming them helps. I don't know why I put the trust button way down there. I must be putting them in alphabetical order. Yeah, that's interesting. There's our customers button, and then where's the other one? Our sales button. In this case, it's going to be the trust button, so I'll select our trust button there, and then click OK. Now, I'm going to test this before we move forward. Anytime you're working with triggers, you always want to test it to make sure it works before you start creating more triggers. So I'm going to preview my slide here, and here's our slide, and I'll click and hover over more, or learn more, and there we have our loss of trust slide layer. Now these other ones aren't going to do anything because we haven't programmed them, so let's go create triggers for those as well. Okay, so I'm going to close out of this. Now I'm going to create another new trigger, I'm going to do this a little bit quicker. I'm going to show you how I actually create triggers. The way I do this is I actually verbalize and talk out my triggers as I'm creating them, which makes people around you, your dog, your cat, your family member, or if you're in an office, your coworker, they're all going to look at you weird. Don't worry about them, right? It doesn't matter. This is how I create my triggers. I always have to verbalize it to make sure I'm doing the right thing. So I'll say, okay, what do I want to do? I want to show a layer. What layer do I want to show? This time it's going to be loss of customers. When do I show it? Well, it's going to be when the user clicks. And what are they going to click on? It's going to be the customers button. There we go. Okay. Literally verbalizing as I do it. Helps me make sure I'm doing the right thing. I'll click OK. And now I'll create my last trigger for loss of sales. So what do we want to do? We want to show a layer, right? What layer do we want to show? Loss of sales. There it is. When do we want to show it? When the user clicks. What do they click on? The sales button. I know it sounds crazy, but it'll help you be better with creating your triggers. And it'll really help you once you start doing conditional triggers. We'll talk about that later. Okay, let me click OK. Now I have my 3 triggers here. Show layer, loss of customers, when the user clicks the customers button, etc., etc. So let's preview this. Preview the slide. And just like that, doesn't matter what order I click on them. Hey, there's our loss of customers. If we lose our customers, we lose our business. Let's learn about loss of trust. And we get our little check mark there. Let us know we viewed it. Learn about loss of trust. Let's learn about this one. Okay, cool. Loss of sales. And I can keep doing it. It's going to keep working over and over again as long as I keep clicking on those buttons because it's just showing the different layers. That's the basic elements of buttons, states, slide layers, and of course triggers. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take those elements and I'm going to show you all sorts of different types of interactions you can create that are similar to this but slightly different. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and close out of this. I'm going to hit the save button because I haven't hit save at all in a while, so you don't want to lose your work, so save early and often. And let's go to slide 1.3. Okay, so what do we have here? So on this slide I have 3 different characters. And what I want to have happen is when the learner clicks on a character, it's going to show one of my slide layers. And this time, my slide layers are a little different because they're taking up the whole screen area, right? And so in this instance, we're going to have to make it so that the learner can close the layer, go back to the base layer so they can click a different character. Unlike this one where the learner could just keep clicking the other Learn More buttons. This one's a little bit different, and you'll see how we'll take care of it. Now, what I want to show you on this slide, even though it's kind of the same concept, it's a click to reveal. What I want to show you on this slide is how you can, A, turn anything into a button. So you can make anything interactive in Storyline and add triggers to it. And B, you can add custom states to different items as well. And C, you can actually add custom, you can add your own triggers to slide layers as well and make those interactive. We'll talk about that. So let's first talk about adding our own custom states to our characters here, all right? So again, why would you want to create states? Multiple variations of an object. Well, the reason why is you want to give some sort of visual indicator that the thing is interactive, right? So in this instance, I want the learner to know that when they hover over my character here, it's interactive. And if I preview my slide here, you will see that doesn't happen, right? There's no visual indicator that these are buttons. And if I added triggers to them, how would the learner know if they didn't hover over it, right? Even though you have instructions, you still want to give the visual indicator. So what we're going to create is our own hover states. So I have my character selected here. And actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the characters all black and white. And then I want to make it so that when the learner hovers over it, it makes them full color as the visual indicator. This is just an interesting technique. Why? Because I like it. You can do anything else. You can make it glow or add a drop shadow. You can make it look however you want. You can actually even change the pose of the character. So let's do that. We're going to not only make it black and white, we're going to change the pose of the character as well to make it even more interesting. So I'm going to go to my Format tab. Let's change the color to black and white. That's where it's going to start out as. And I'm going to edit states, add a new state. And this time it's going to be a hover state. You can see all these built-in states. So I'll do hover, click add. I could add the other states if I wanted to. In this case, we don't need it. I just need a hover state. That's fine. And what we're going to do is when the user hovers over it, we want to change the color. We'll make it full color. And if I go to my design tab, I can actually change the pose. Maybe we'll change her pose to be, I don't know, let's look at the different ones that we have available to us. We have this one currently selected. Maybe what we'll do, I want a positive happy pose. Is this waving? It's kind of waving. We'll do this one or this one. I like that. Okay. And it's going to change her pose as well. Now, I'm going to have to move her over a little bit because she's got a little bit overlapping with our other character here. That's my hover state. Now I'm going to click Done Editing States. And now when the user hovers over it, it's going to do that. Okay? Let's preview and see what that looks like. I'll preview the slide. And there we go. Hey, there's my hover state, right? Now I know it's something that's potentially interactive. Now let's do the same thing with our other characters. One of the cool things you can do in Storyline is you can actually copy and paste states and formatting from one object to another to help save a little bit of time, right? So I've customized this character. I made her black and white by default, and then I added the custom hover state with her being full color and with a different pose, right? Maybe I want to do the same thing for these other characters. I'm going to use my Format Painter to do that. So under my Home tab, there's this Format Painter, and the Format Painter allows you to copy and paste formatting, but it also allows you to copy and paste states. Now, we may not get the custom pose, but we'll be able to adjust it either way. It'll at least add the hover state and the black and white color, but let's see what happens. So I have my character selected. I'm going to select the Format Painter. What it's going to do is going to copy all the formatting and states. And I know I have my Format Painter activated because I have the little paintbrush on my cursor. Now I'm going to go over here and click on this character here. And it did copy and paste over the formatting. It didn't change the pose of the character, but that's okay. It did save us some time, and we can fix that on our own. So now let's do the same thing with this guy. So I'm going to copy and paste her formatting. I'll copy the formatting, go over to him, and paste it just like that. All right. Now let's go edit those poses so it'll be different. So I have to edit the hover state, go to my Design tab, change the pose, and let's change his to be something different as well. I don't know, something interesting. Hey, he's a cool guy, right? There we go. Done editing states, and let's do the same thing with this lady here. Edit states, hover state, change the pose, and hers will be, I don't know. No, we don't want that. That's not good. That's neutral. Let's make her do, no. See, I gotta get picky with this. This is where I start analyzing all of my decisions. I don't know what that is. She's explaining, but sure, we'll go with that. Hey, she's like, what up, right? Okay, done editing states. Now, if I preview this, let's see what it looks like. Okay, there she is. Hey, what's up? Hey, he's a cool guy, right? So there's my hover states. That's how I know they're interactive. So you can add custom states to different objects, like characters or other items as well, not just, buttons and Storyline. Now that we've added our states, let's add our triggers to make each of these slide layers actually reveal when the learner clicks on the button. Let's actually make them interactive, right? So we have to do that with triggers, no differently than what we did on the last slide. So I'll go ahead and click, we're going to start with this character here. So I'm going to add a new trigger. And what we're going to do is we're going to show a layer just like we did. What layer are we going to show? I believe she is the experienced executive. Yes. And we're going to do it when user clicks on. And this is one of those instances where, shame on me, I didn't rename the items in my timeline. So I have characters 1, 2, 3. Which one is it, right? So you'll notice when I hover over the list, it highlights the different items on the screen. That's a good little helpful thing to help me identify what I'm selecting. So I want it to be when the learner selects this character. So that's character 1, right? So show layer, experienced executive when user clicks character 1. I'll click OK. Let's do the same thing for our second character. So create a new trigger. We're going to show a layer. What layer are we going to show? I think it is young professional. When user clicks, and that's another thing about triggers in Storyline. It remembers the actions you took previously. So I don't have to choose show layer or user clicks. It's repeating that because it's what I did previously, which saves me some time. So what are they going to click on this time? It's going to be character 2. All right. Click OK. And then we'll create our last trigger for our third guy here. Show layer. What layer are we going to show? He is a driven leader. And it's going to be when user clicks, character 3. All right, done. Click OK. Now let's preview it, see what it looks like. Okay, so we have our hover states. Very cool. Click her. Hey, and there's our pop-up window. Now you notice I can't click. What do I do now, right? Well, this is a great example where maybe if you create a pop-up window like this, you want the learner to be able to exit out of the pop-up window and go back to the base layer to click a different character, right? Because we're taking up all this space on our slide. So it works, but we can only click on one. So we need to make it so that the learner can close out of this. So this is where we're going to add some additional functionality separate from what we just did on the first slide. So I'm going to close out of this. And if I click on my slide layers, this is what I want you to know about slide layers. Like I said, it's just like adding a slide on top of your slide, right? Even though we can see what's in the background, I have my own triggers panel for my slide layer, and I even have my own timeline. I can actually animate things on slide layers, and I'll show you an example of that here in a little bit. So what I want to do is, let's say we wanted to add a little X button up here. So the learner clicks X, like it closes the pop-up window, right? Kind of like we're creating a little program with a pop-up window or a window that opens up and then they can close out of it. Now there's a couple different ways I can do that. I could go insert a traditional button if I wanted to, but in my opinion, this is actually a good use case for using icons. So I'm going to select the icon, and I've already searched for close, and there's all sorts of different little icons like that here. And maybe what we'll do is we'll do this one here. I like the style of icon, so we'll do that. Click insert. It's way bigger than what we need it to be, so I'm going to make it smaller. And I'll put that up here. And let's rename this in the timeline. Let's call this our close button. And we'll add a trigger to it. So I'm on my slide layer, for this case, the driven leader slide layer, and I added a button to it. Now I'm going to create a trigger on this slide layer. That's going to really just do the opposite of what we just did. So I have my button here. I'm going to add a trigger. We're going to tell storyline to, we're not showing a layer. This time we're doing the opposite. So we're hiding a layer. What layer are we hiding? This layer, the one that we're on, when the user clicks the close button, all right? And the reason why that automatically filled in is because I actually had the close button selected when I created the trigger. It's a little time-saving tip. So if you select the item you're creating a trigger on, it'll automatically fill in some of these items. So hide layer this layer when user clicks the close button. I'll click OK. Now let's preview it before we continue on to make sure it works. I'll preview the slide. And we'll click on our cool dude guy here. Cool, we're learning about it. Now we'll close. Hey, and it works, right? And they can keep doing that over and over again. Now let's add that same close button to all of my other slide layers here. Now this one's easy. All I have to do is copy and paste it. So I'll select the button here, and I'm just going to paste it here. And this is a cool thing. When you're working with triggers in Storyline, when you copy and paste objects that have triggers, it brings over the trigger with it. So I don't even have to create the triggers. I just did it once, and I copied and pasted it, and that ensures it's in the exact same location as well. So now we'll preview the slide. Okay, so we have our different characters. We'll start with her. We're going to learn about this experienced executive. She's real cool. Cool. Let's close out of it. Let's do this dude here. Very awesome. Cool. We'll do her. She looks cool. We're going to learn about young professionals. Awesome. Hey, look, we created a simple click to reveal interaction. Again, using not technically buttons, but we turned our characters into buttons by adding triggers to them, and we added custom states, and then we also had slide layers, and we learned about triggers, and we learned about adding additional triggers on our slide layers to create this simple click to reveal interaction. Again, same elements that we learned previously, but used in a different way. Let's move on to our next slide, next example. All right, so this one's similar, but slightly different. We're going to learn some additional features for creating these types of interactions that are going to build upon some of the tools that we just learned about. So this is what I would consider a tabs interaction. A tabs interaction is where you have buttons like this, tabs. It might be across the side or across the top, where you can then click and reveal different content in this area, for example. Now, the elements that we have here are really no different than what we had on the previous slide, right? We have 4 buttons, and the learner is going to click on them, reveal, one of 4 different slide layers, all right? And in these buttons, I've already created states here. So if I go to my states panel, we have a normal, hover, and selected state. Easy peasy, right? Now, if I preview this, let me preview the slide, just to show what we have here. So it's click each tab to learn more. So there's my hover states, right? I click, it's selected, and it's not showing anything, right? Because we haven't done the triggers yet. But same thing here, click, selected. And you can actually see that I can select all 3 of them. That's something that we're going to address and fix here as well, because maybe I only want one selected at any given time, okay? Then I'm going to close this. And just to put into practice everything we just did before, let's create our triggers to show each of our slide layers here, right? So we want to show step 1 when the user clicks 1, step 2, so forth and so on, right? Easy peasy. And these just have some simple text on it. All right, so I'm going to click on this first button here, create a trigger. No different than what we just did before. What are we going to do? We're going to show a layer. What layer are we going to show? Step 1. When are we going to do it? When user clicks tab 1. Why did it automatically know that it was tab 1? Well, because I had tab 1 selected when I created my trigger. So that's it. Done. Great. Now let's do our second one. I'll click on my second button, create a trigger. What are we going to do? Show a layer. That's what we did previously, so it automatically fills that in for me. We're saving time. What layer are we going to show? Step 2. When are we going to show it? When user clicks tab 2. Why does it automatically fill that in? Well, because I had tab 2 selected before I created my trigger. Again, time-saving tip. Click OK. Now click on tab number 3, create my trigger. Same thing, show layer, tab 3. When user clicks tab 3. Good. And then tab 4. See, once you get into this repetitiveness, it gets much easier. Show layer, tab 4, when user clicks tab 4. Or step 4, when user clicks tab 4. Okay. I programmed the slide. That literally took like, what, less than a minute, right? Of course, I had some stuff pre-built, but, you know, actually making it work was pretty simple. Let's preview the slide. Let's see what we have here. Okay. So we have our different buttons. They already have the hover states built in. I click. Hey, we get some content on the screen. Now there's a couple issues here. We can still see click each tab to learn more. We're going to address that. Address objections. Okay, same thing. Step 3, step 4. Now, besides the fact that we can see that text back here, it says click each tab to learn more. I'll show you how to hide that. That's a cool little feature that's hidden in plain sight. You'll also notice that all my tabs are selected. And if I click on, go back to step 3, it deselects it. Or if I click back on step 1, it deselects it. And it gets really confusing to know what's selected, what's not selected. We're going to fix that as well so that only one tab at any given time can be that dark blue, that selected state, all right? But from a functionality standpoint, it's working more or less. But let's address this part first. Click each tab to learn more. So by default, you know, just like when, going back to my example of slide layers being like a transparency, right? A transparency and overhead is transparent. You can overlay something, but you can still see what's beneath it, right? The same is true for our slide layers. So even though I have some text here on the slide layer, I can still see everything that's beneath it. So how do you address this? How do you fix it? Well, there's a couple different ways you can do it. I'll tell you what I used to do when I was first new to Storyline. There was 2 things that I did which were really cumbersome, that made no sense. The first thing that I would do is I go, gosh, I don't want them to see that text. So maybe what I'll do is I'll go insert a shape, and this is not the right way to do it, by the way. And I would draw a shape over it, and then I'd make the shape white, shape fill white, shape outline white, and then send it to the back of this slide layer. I'll click send to back, and then it effectively covers it up, right? That's kind of a workaround. It works, but you know, if I go to my timeline, you know, if I hide that, it's still there. It does work. That's one way you can do it. Not a big fan of that, and it works well in this instance because I have a very easy white background. But if there was like on this image, that wouldn't work really well. It would be really weird how to fix that. The other way I would do is do something with triggers. Like I could create a trigger on the slide layer to tell Storyline to change the state of my, oh gosh, where is it? Introduction title, right there, to hidden when the timeline starts on this layer. Yeah, that would work. So change the state of this to hidden when the timeline starts on this layer. Click OK. Now, the only way to see if that works is if I preview it. So I'll preview the slide. I don't even remember what layer I'm on anymore, but we'll figure it out. I think it's the first one. Okay, that kind of works. It made it hidden. You could do it with triggers. That seems like the right way, but then, I'd have to go do that with all of my other slide layers. I have to create triggers on each of those. It would be nice if there was an easier way to do it, and there is. You can do it with the timeline. So one of the features hidden in plain sight, when you're on a slide layer, right? I'm on a slide layer, any of my slide layers. If I want to hide that text, click each tab to learn more, which is an item of text on my base layer. The way that I can do that is if I go to my slide layer, I open up my timeline. You'll notice that when you are on a slide layer, at the bottom of your timeline, you'll see this option here for base layer objects. And I get this little caret here that I can click and expand. and it shows me all of the objects on my base layer. And I can actually hide any object on my base layer when the learner's on this slide layer, because I'm actually on a slide layer. So stick with me here. So that text, I think, was called introduction title. I don't know why it was called that. It doesn't matter. I'm going to use my show hide icon. I'm going to hide it. And it may not look like it's hiding yet, but let's see here. Sometimes you have to click back and forth. Oh, there we go. Beautiful glitch in Storyline. So I have it hidden, and now it won't show because it's hidden on the timeline. Now I have to do that with all of my slide layers. So step 2, I have to hide the introduction title. Step 3, hide the introduction title. Step 4, hide my introduction title. And now it's hidden. All right. So again, going into the timeline, expanding base layer objects, you can hide individual items on your timeline. I think we'll have another example where I demonstrate this. All right. So let's preview it, see what that looks like. I'll go back to my base layer, preview the slide. Okay. Click. Hey, step 1, it's hidden. Click step 2, step 3, step 4. We fixed that. Okay, so that's hiding base layer objects while you're on a slide layer. Okay, now let's fix this other issue here. We have these different buttons here with different selected states. A selected state means the learner is currently on it, right? And anytime you click on an item, it'll turn it selected. And if you click on it again, it'll deselect it, right? That's essentially what I'm doing here to select it, deselect it. Now, usually when you're doing something like this, you only want one item selected at a time, or maybe you only want one item selected at a time. Even though it's showing each of my slide layers like it's supposed to, you get this weird confusing thing where all of them are selected, or I can deselect some of them. It's just confusing, right? Now, how did I fix this when I was new to Storyline? Well, when I was new to Storyline, I would create a whole litany. Is that the right word? A whole plethora. A whole bunch of triggers to solve for this. What I would do is I would create a trigger that would tell Storyline that when change the state of my button 2 to normal if this is selected. And then I'd have to create another trigger, change the state of button 3 to normal if button 1 is selected, and then change the state of button 4 to normal if button 1 is selected. Then I have to do the same thing for all of these. Change the state of button 1 to normal if button 2 is selected. Change the state of button 3 to normal if button 2 is selected. And so in this instance, we have to create 4x4. We have to create 16 triggers to make that work. And if you have more than 4 things, you need to multiply it. You'd have so many triggers, which is just crazy. Well, one of the things that we can do in Storyline is we can create something known as a button set. This is special. What a button set does is it essentially makes it so all of the buttons are connected, but only one of them can be selected at one time, which makes them act like radio buttons. Now to do that, I'm just going to select all 4 of my buttons to feature hidden in plain sight. I have all of them selected. I'm going to right click, and you'll notice this option here for button set. And I'm going to create a new set, or I can just choose this one here, but I'll do a new set. We'll call this my tabs, and click add. Now nothing changes visually on the screen. I have no indicator that I've created a button set. The only way I would know is if I click on all of them, select them all, go to button set. I have my tabs button set, right? But what that does is a button set makes them operate as if they're a series of radio buttons where only one item can be selected at a time. So let's see if it works. Keep our fingers crossed that it works. Okay. Step 1, hey, it works. Okay, well, that one works. It's selected. Let's see what happens when I click step 2. Hey, look. Now this one went back to normal automatically because the button set only allows one to be selected at any given time. And now we've created our little tabs interaction just like that. All right. So what did we learn on that? Well, we built upon what we learned. We created another click to reveal type interaction, but we learned that you can hide items on a base layer. And then we also learned about creating button sets where you only allow one set of items to be selected at any given time. All right. I'm gonna hit save. Okay. Now the final thing I want to show with this slide here is I want to show how you can create animated slide layers, where you can make slide layers animate in on your screen, where you can create some really interesting types of interactions. So what we have here on this slide here is this is a drag and drop interaction where the learner, they read the scenario, they drag one of 2 options, which we have 2 slide layers for, right? We have a that's right, not quite, okay? So we have a couple different slide layers. And then we have this button here. You need some extra help. You can click on this button here, and it's going to reveal this little slide out panel where the learner can look at this checklist to get a reminder, all right? So let's start by making this little slide out panel work, okay? We already have the slide layer for it, easy peasy. What we need to first do is add a trigger to this. So I'm gonna click on this button, add a new trigger. We're going to show a layer. What layer are we gonna show? Our resources layer. When the user, not when timeline starts, no, when user clicks on, and I should have renamed it, shame on me, group 7. Okay, click OK. Now let's see if that works. Preview the slide. Okay, so let's click on this. Hey, it works. Now I have this button here where I can make it go back. So let's make it go back first. So before we move on, not first, next. So I'll go to my resources tab. Here's my button here. And I'll add, just like we did earlier with a little close icon, right? Create a new trigger. We're going to hide a layer. This layer, when user clicks group 1, again, I should have renamed it, shame on me. Okay, now let's preview it, see if that works. Preview the slide. Okay, so I'm gonna click. Hey, it comes out. Click back, it goes back. Very cool, right? Just a little like toggle, if you will. I love that. Now, what if I wanted it to be animated? What if I wanted it to animate in when the learner clicks on this button, right? Well, this is where you can do some interesting things in Storyline in your timeline when you're on a slide layer. We have all these different elements here on the screen. I'm not sure what this element is. I'll delete that, don't need that. We have this little icon button here. We have the little checklist. We have the title. We have this little rectangle here. And what's this item? Where's that item on the timeline? I have no idea. Maybe it's part of the checklist. Who knows, right? We have all these different elements on the screen. What I can do is actually add animations so that when my slide layer is revealed, it'll animate in, all right? And I'll actually show you another way you can add animations using slide transitions. But let's animate this using entrance animations. So let's say I wanted this all animate in. Maybe what I want to do is I want to add an entrance animation. I'll go to my animations tab, do an entrance animation. Maybe we're going to have it all fly in from the left. So we'll have it fly in from the left. If you haven't played with animations before, by the way, I have another how-to workshop. I'll put a link up here or down in the comments where you learn all about animations in the timeline and Storyline. Again, if you're just new to Storyline, you'll definitely want to check that out. So I've added an entrance animation, so we'll have that animate in. We also want our little button to animate in, so we'll have that fly in from the left. And then maybe what we'll do is we'll have each of these cascade in slightly thereafter. You'll see what I mean by that here in a moment. So we'll have this animate in from the left. They're all really going to fly in from the left. And then all of these checklist items, we'll have those all fly in from the left as well. So we'll do fly in from the left. But what I'm going to do, just for the sake of visual interest, let me zoom in here. So we have this. I'm just going to stagger these slightly. And you'll see what kind of effect this creates. It'll be kind of cool. They'll all kind of cascade in quite literally. And you can play around with this. This is just one way to do it. There's different ways you can animate, different slide layers. I'll show you some other ones over here when I show you some of the different ways you can make things animate in. All right, so let's see how that looks. Let's preview this. Okay. Now I'm just realizing here I do need to add a state to this button as well because there's no visual indicator that it's interactive. But look how that animates in. How cool is that, right? And then close out of it and it animates in. Very cool. So you can add animations to make things like pop-up windows literally pop up, which is kind of cool, right? So let me close out of this. There's a couple things I need to do. Let's add a state to our button here. So we have our button here. And let's go to our states panel, edit states. Let's add at least a hover state, right? Add a hover state. And it doesn't matter what order you do things in. You don't have to do triggers first before you do states or do slide layers. These are all things that you can do in any order you want. Again, I'm just building upon what I've already done here. So for the hover state, maybe I'll give it a darker green fill. It's this green fill color. Maybe I'll make it this dark green here, like that, okay? And let's do the same thing on our resources tab. This is technically a separate button. It looks like it's the same button, but it's really its own separate button because this one doesn't actually move, even though it looks like it because it animates in so quickly. So let me click on that, edit states, add a state, hover state, click add, and we'll do that green fill as well, okay? And let's preview it and see what that looks like. Okay, so there's that. Animates in. We have our hover state. I know it's a button, and it goes back. Now, could we make it animate out? Technically, there's a way to do that in Storyline. It requires a little bit more with cue points and triggers. That's for a separate how-to workshop, but at least you can make it animate in. Making it all animate out, that's a separate topic for a separate day, right? Now let's take care of these drag and drop items. This is another thing I want to show you, how you can actually create custom drag and drops with just the elements that I've already taught you. Now there's a lot of different ways you can create drag and drop interactions. One way to do that is by creating a free form quiz question to actually make it a graded quiz question. But let's say we're just creating an informal interaction with some basic correct or incorrect feedback. We're not actually grading it. We just want the learner to drag and drop an answer here and reveal something, right? We don't need to use variables. We don't need to do anything complicated. We can actually just do this with some triggers, and we have a correct and incorrect slide layer to do that. And you can see I put different characters here. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to select this item here, and we're going to use triggers to reveal the slide layers. So same concept of what we just learned, but we're doing it with a different type of trigger, this time dragging and dropping. So I'm going to create a trigger here, and we're going to tell Storyline, what do we want to do? We want to show a layer. And I think this is our correct answer. We're going to show our correct layer. Not when user clicks, but we're going to say when object is dropped on. So when object's dropped on, when what object? This is going to be our first option, drag number 1. When it's dropped on what? Our drop target. Let's see, what do we have here? There's drop zone. We'll click that. All right. So show layer correct when the user drops the object on the drop target. What object? Object number 1, which is this, on the drop zone. So let's see if it works. I'm going to click OK. Let's preview the slide. And by creating that trigger, it automatically converts it into a little drag and drop. So I can click and drag. Hey, and we get some correct feedback. Now, there's a couple things we need to fix here. Obviously, we need to make our incorrect one work, but we can see 2 different characters here. We can fix all of that. But let's go ahead and make the second draggable item work. So here's my next draggable item. It's no different than what we just did before. Let me click on it, create a new trigger. We're going to show layer. What layer are we going to show? This time it's going to be our incorrect layer. When the user drags and drops what item? Object number 2. It automatically selected that because I had it selected when I created the trigger. And when they drop it on the drop zone, or drop target. Okay? Click OK. Let's preview and see if that works. Okay. Click and drag. Hey, and then we have that animated in using the same things that we just learned a moment ago, and then animated out. I don't think it was supposed to do that, but it did. And then we have our character here. All right, so let's fix that too. So we have those different characters sharing, right? Or showing. So we have this character here, but then on the feedback, we have these different characters. How do we fix that, right? Well, no different than what we learned before. We can actually hide the base layer characters on our timeline by going to base layer objects, and we can hide our character. Where is he at? Character 1 from the base layer. Now it doesn't show up right away. I think that's a glitch in Storyline. Oh, there he disappeared. Let's do the same thing with our incorrect layer. Come down here, and we're going to hide our character 1 from our base layer, and we'll be good there. All right. And let's preview it. Preview our slide. Okay. Drag and drop. Hey, he's good. We have a couple weird things happening there. We can figure out what's going on there, and then we can continue on, right? So let's see what's going on with that. That doesn't make sense to me. Why is there 2 of those text boxes there? I have no idea. I'm going to delete that. And delete that. Oh, I have them here too. What the heck? Who knows? I'll delete those. We don't need those. Okay, now it's all good. Okay, and of course, just like I did earlier, I can make all of this animate in, just like I made our resources tab animate in, right? So if I wanted to, I could have this box animate in. Where's my animations? They can fly in from this time we'll make it fly in from the right, along with our text and this, and this, and our button. We can make all those fly in from the right. And let's preview that and see how that looks. Okay, if we get it right, and then it flies in, right? Very good. Okay, And of course, we have our resources tab that the learner can click on as well. So that's how you can, again, create something where it animates in, slides in, and then you have a simple drag and drop that reveals different slide layers. Now, we've learned the basics of buttons and slide layers and triggers and states. Now, let's just go one step further and play with a couple of different things that you can do to enhance that experience, right? So I showed you earlier about how you can add animations to the items on your timeline. There's actually simpler ways that you can animate slide layers. So for example, on this interaction here, if we come back here, let's say we wanted, this to animate in. One of the things that we can do is we can actually apply slide transitions to our slide layers. So if I'm on a slide layer, I go to my transitions tab. Any of the slide transitions I would use on a slide to transition from one slide to another, you can actually use on slide layers. So one, for example, I might use is fade. I can make this fade in if I wanted to. I'll do this to this one as well. I'll have it fade in, and then I'll have this one fade in as well, right? Preview the slide. And you can see how it fades in. So that's one other way that you can animate your slide layers just like that, all right? That's pretty cool. If we go back to, this one here, just like I did with the drag and drop interaction here on slide 1.5, if I go back here, I can make all of these animate in as well. So maybe what I wanted to do, I'll select all of these items. Maybe instead of fly in, maybe I want them to zoom in. So I'll go to my animations tab. Maybe I'll have these all let's find our zoom. They're going to zoom in, right? So it looks like it's popping out of the screen. Let's see what that looks like. I'll preview the slide. And you see how they zoom in like that, right? So you can get really creative with animations, with your slide layers to create all sorts of different experiences just like that, all right? Now, the final thing I want to show you, and this is a question people ask often, is what if you wanted to make it so that the learner had to click all of the items before moving forward? Is there a way that you can do that without having to get into variables? And the answer to that is yeah, there actually is ways that you can do that. So I have my different buttons here. And let's say I wanted to, let's preview the slide. Let's say, just hypothetically, I wanted the learner to have to click on all three of those tabs, it doesn't matter which order, before they can move forward, right? We can do this with some simple state changes and with some triggers, okay? So I'm gonna close out of my preview here. And the first thing I need to do is I need to change the state of my next button to disabled. This makes it so that it's disabled, the learner can't move forward until it's re-enabled. By default, the next button's always available, but we can disable it. So I'm gonna create a trigger in Storyline on this slide that's gonna tell Storyline to change the state of. So when you create states, you can actually make Storyline change the state of those objects. We're going to change the state of, what are we going to change the state of? If I go all the way down here, we have our player buttons. I'm going to change the state of the next button, not to normal. I'm going to change it to, I can make it hidden or I can make it disabled. I'm going to make it disabled. And I'm going to do it when the timeline starts on this slide. What that means is it's going to change the state of the next button to disabled when the learner gets to the slide. That's what timeline starts means on this slide. So let's see if that works. I'm gonna click OK. Let's preview the slide. Okay, my next button is disabled. It did exactly what I told it to do. And now let's make it re-enabled once the learner has clicked on all three of these buttons, all right? So I'm gonna close the preview and I'm going to create a trigger. This is another one. It's gonna be the same thing, very similar to what we just did, but it's gonna be slightly different. Now we're going to change the state of our next button to normal when the state of what? When the state of our buttons, let's find all of our buttons here. We have our sales button, when our trust button, when our customers button, I'm selecting all three of those. When all three of those are visited. Remember we had that visited state with a little check mark? So we can actually control when the learner moves forward. So we're going to change the state of the next button to normal when the state of all of our three buttons are visited. Okay, I'll click OK. Let's see if that works. Preview the slide. Now, what I want you to do, keep your eye on this next button. So we'll do first one. Okay, I looked at that. Second one, that one was visited. When I click on the third one, it was visited as well. Now my next button re-enables. Okay, hunky-dory, pretty cool. Now you move forward. So that's one simple way where you can control the learner moving forward. They have to click on all things. Be careful when you do that. I mean, I'm not a big fan of lockdown navigation, but if you have to do it, that's one way you can do it. You don't even have to use variables or anything like that. We're just doing it based off of the state of different objects. All right. So that's creating custom basic interactions in Articulate Storyline. We talked about the simplest form of interactivity in Storyline, markers, right? Then we learned about the basic elements, components of creating interactive e-learning in Storyline with buttons, states, slide layers, and triggers. And then we learned how you can create different pop-up windows and have buttons that change states and trigger for that to happen. We learned how we can create different items and turn them into buttons with their own custom states. We learned how to create a tabbed style interaction where we could also use a button set to make it so that only one item can be selected at a time. We also learned how on the when you're on a slide layer, you can actually hide base layer items through your timeline. And then we learned how you can create animated slide layers in Storyline and reveal slide layers with a drag and drop trigger. So we learned a lot. And those are the basic elements of interactivity in Storyline. Like I said, that's just scratching at the surface of all the different types of interactivity that you can create with those elements, all right? So once you understand those, the sky is quite literally the limit, all right? So thank you so much for watching. As I mentioned at the top of the video, if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to click that like, subscribe, and that bell button to get alerted the next time I publish a video like this one. And make sure to join us inside the eLearning Designers community where you can connect, network, and learn from other eLearning designers looking to grow their careers. And check out some of the resources down below to some of my other how-to workshops on Articulate Storyline, even if you're just getting started, or some of my more advanced stuff, getting into variables, and all of that great stuff. So thank you so much for watching. My name is Tim Slade, and until next time, I'll see you around.